Hi everybody! Welcome to Creating Works Cited Entries, or as it might also be called, How to Avoid Plagiarism, Part 2. Now, if you're already a subscriber when this video goes up, you're probably thinking, wait, what about Part 1? Which is totally valid because I am creating these out of order. I've already talked to my students about why it's important to avoid plagiarism. Hopefully, that's kind of a once and done thing. But the process of finding the information that you need and setting it up according to a certain format is not difficult, but detailed. So I decided to produce this video and hopefully get it on the channel before we have the Works Cited lesson so that students can refer back to it as often as they need to in order to go through that process successfully. Since I know I have a tendency to go on and on, I'm planning to create this series in 4 videos. This one will just be about creating works cited entries for different types of sources. Then we'll go on to one about formatting the works cited page itself, then using in-text citations, and then I'll go back and make one for why it's important to give credit to your sources. We'll be using MLA style, which is set by the Modern Language Association. I've linked to Purdue OWL down in the description. Purdue OWL is the online writing lab for Purdue University. It's really a helpful resource, and it does discuss other types of format besides MLA. However, I teach humanities courses, so we use MLA, and that's what I'll be showing as a result. Specifically, it's MLA version 8, so make sure to check with your instructor to see which version you're expected to use and check for any changes that you may need to make based on that. One of the concepts that MLA style uses in reference to sources is the idea of containers. What this means is that a collection of articles, like a magazine or a newspaper, or a collection of songs, like an album, or a collection of stories and poems, like a literature book, is not typically used as a source if you're referencing the article, the song, or the poem. The magazine contains the article, the album contains the song, the literature book contains the poem. The same concept holds true with digital sources as well. We'll get to that in the examples. The second concept I want you to remember is that if you don't have one of the pieces of information, you just skip it and go to what's next. Again, we will discuss that later. I'm going to be walking you through creating citations for 4 different types of sources. I'll be using a Google Doc, but since this won't involve formatting more than the use of italics, pretty much any word processing program will do. You might use other types of sources, but these 4 are the most commonly used. The first source is a book that is a single work, such as a novel. I'm going to work with this one, which is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I'm kind of bummed that I still have this on my class bookshelf because it's such a good book, but none of my students decided to read it. I'm actually reading Concrete Rose, which is the 3rd associated book, though it's set earlier than the other 2. I got it from the library. So, to start off, always look for the author's name first. As you are typing up the entry along with me, pay attention to the punctuation. I might put some timestamps down in the description so that you can just jump to the start of that section when you need to instead of having to search through the video. I always find that kind of a pain. So, you want the author's last name, then comma, first name, period. Then you put the title of the book. Pretty easy so far. Make sure you use standard title capitalization for the book. Don't just go by what it looks like on the cover. On the come up is in all caps, but I'm not going to use all caps when I put it in my works cited entry. Next, you want the city of publication, the publisher, and the publication date. This information you can find on the back of the title page. Right there. It's in with some other information, so you'll have to look around, but you can find it. And that's all the information that you will need. You do need to go back, highlight the title of the book, and put it in italics. One catch is that the city of publication should only be used if the book was published before 1900, if the publisher has offices in more than one country, or if the publisher is unknown in North America. What counts as known or unknown? I would suggest checking with your instructor as to whether or not they want you to include it. So, this one is Thomas, Angie, period. On the come up, period. New York, Balzer and Bray, comma, 2019, period. And then I select the title and put it in italics. Done. Next, we are going to look at a print periodical. Periodicals are called that because they are published periodically, like a daily newspaper or a weekly or monthly magazine. In this case, I'm going to be using National Geographic. First, we look for the article's author, then the title of the article, then the periodical title. Next is the date of publication, which may be day, month, and year, or just month and year. It's uncommon for it to be just year, but that does happen. And then finally, the page range. For this one, I'm going to use the article on the cover, which is about Pablo Picasso. The thing is, the title is on page 99. But the article itself doesn't start until page 103. So to check which one I should use for the start of the article, I'm going to go back to the table of contents. Well, this says page 98 where the picture is, even though there's not a number there. So this Works Cited entry will say Cal, Claudia. It looks like the title is Intense, Provocative, Disturbing, Captivating, Genius Picasso. And that sounds kind of weird to me. And then if I look at the cover, it's different there. And then if I go to the table of contents, it's different there too. So then I'm going to try looking it up online. And I find the author's bio on LinkedIn, and it's different there too. This is one of those points where, again, it's a good idea to talk to your instructor about what you should use. So that's what I did. I actually went down the hall and talked to some of the other English teachers here at the school to see what they said. They agreed that it was a bit of a stumper, but we all had the same reaction, to use the title that's actually at the beginning of the article. Thanks, friends. So, trying again. Cal, Claudia. Quotation marks for the title. Intense, provocative, disturbing, captivating, genius, Picasso. Period. Close quotation marks. Yes, it looks weird. There are no commas in the title, though, so I'm not going to put commas in the title. National Geographic, May 2018, pages 98 through 118. Then, of course, go back and italicize the title, and that's all I need. The day always goes the number of the day, the month, and then the year. 4 digits for the year. You abbreviate the month except for May, June, and July. It's the first 3 letters of the month and then a period. Except for September, which is SEPT. Why they couldn't have been consistent, I don't know. SEP works just as well, but whatever. Next, pages. If you have an article that's just one page instead of PP period, it's just P period. Additionally, sometimes an article will do what's called jumping, which means that it pauses. There are other articles, and then the rest of that article is later on. In that case, you would give the page range of the first section of the article and then add a plus. So like 98-110 plus would mean the article started on page 98, went straight through to page 110, and then there were some other articles, and then this article finished up somewhere after all that. Usually it's at the back of the magazine, but you don't have to give the page. Finally, newspaper pages. Major newspapers are often organized into sections. Typically, A is news, B is finance, C is sports, and D is entertainment. So a newspaper article page range might be A2+, meaning that the article started on the second page of section A and then jumped to another page later to finish. So, we're about halfway done. Next, we're going to look at digital sources, starting with an article on a website. We're going to need as much of the following information as we can find, although sometimes that can be a little bit tricky. We need the author, title of website, publisher, publication date, location, which is the URL or the permalink, and then the date of access if applicable. A quick note on that. MLA format suggests but does not require the use of a date of access, which is the most recent time that you looked at that web page. However, many instructors do ask you to use it, so as usual, definitely follow your instructor's guidelines. I'll show you how to include it in case you need to. I want something reputable, so I'm just going to go to CBS News, try to ignore the ads, and technology. Okay, since I'm just doing this to practice and illustrate citing sources, I'm just going to pick an article that sounds interesting and isn't about either Amazon or Apple. Oof. Here we go. So we start off with the author's name right there at the top. The headline is the title, but when I put it in, I need to use standard title capitalization. So I need to change it just like I did with On the Come Up. Now, the name of the website can be tricky. Sometimes students get mixed up and think it's this. That is actually the beginning of the URL or web address. We do need that, but later. To find the name of the website, we want to look at the very top of the page and go to sometimes the center or sometimes on the left to find something that's kind of noticeable. So it's this. Next, we need to find the publisher, which is the company that owns this website. For that, we often have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. We are looking for the copyright symbol, that C in a circle thing. Okay, there it is. You might need to look on a home or an about page if it's not on the page with the article. Next, the publication date. Like with print articles, it's important to be as precise as possible with the date. If it gives an actual timestamp, we don't need that, but just the date. So our entry will look like this. Strassman, comma, mark, period. Quotation marks, he was reading at 1 and doing fractions by 2. At 13 years old, comma, he's majoring in aerospace engineering at Georgia Tech, period, close quotation marks. CBS News, comma, CBS Interactive Incorporated, period, comma, 13 Sept, period, 2021, comma, www.cbsnews.com/news/. I'm just gonna not read that because it's long and you can just copy paste in the URL, which is pretty easy. Accessed 16 September 2021. Notice again, September is abbreviated to SEPT, period. So a couple of things that I want to point out as I go through and edit. First, the easy thing. I am going to italicize the title of the site. It's a major work and a container. The site contains the articles on the web pages. Think of it like a magazine or newspaper that contains the articles on those pages. So that's quick. Next, I just want you to look at the name of the publisher. There is supposed to be a comma after it, which there is, but it looks weird because there's a period before the comma. Now, normally we wouldn't do that, but in this case, Inc. is an abbreviation for the word incorporated. So we need the period there for the abbreviation, and then we have to have the comma. So it's actually correct in this case. Then I'm going to go back to the title. First, I want to point out that a single article is considered a minor work. Titles of minor works are enclosed in quotation marks, just like it was for the magazine article. Pay attention to the punctuation. Notice the period goes inside the closing quotes. Then I'm going to change the way the title is capitalized. Remember, I've already said MLA style uses standard title capitalization. A lot of newspapers, magazines, and websites do not follow that style. So I'm going to have to go through and edit the title. Actually, both of the other titles that I used were in all caps, and that got changed as well. The first word is always capitalized, and that's already done. So now I go through and capitalize everything, the first letter of the word, except for articles, a, and the, coordinating conjunctions, fanboys like this and prepositions like in and at. Be careful with prepositions because there are a lot of them. And not all of them are teeny tiny words. Underneath is a preposition, for example. I also want to point out that this at, while it's not the first word of the title, is the first word of a sentence in the title. So it also has to be capitalized as well. Okay, I also want to point out the way the dates look. It's always the number of the day, abbreviated month, and then the 4-digit year. If you've been setting up documents in MLA format, you may be familiar with that already. Something I want you to remember is that in the heading on the first page of your essay, the month is not abbreviated, but It is abbreviated on the Works Cited page. So we do abbreviate the month for the date of the article and in the date of access. Note that the date of access is at the end and it's marked just with the one word accessed. The last thing that I want to point out is the URL. Notice that I started it with www period. So I left off the http:// that does not get included. You start with what is right after the /. Sometimes, a lot of the time, but not always, it will be www. Whew. So we're done with that one. If you need a break, now is a good time to pause the video, stretch, maybe get a snack. I like snacks. And welcome back, I guess. The last type of source that we're going to work with is an article in a journal on an online database. I'm not going to give any instructions on how to use an online database in this video because goodness knows it's already long enough as it is. But I will make one that focuses on using online databases. So for this, we need to find even more information. But one good thing is that a lot of online databases will provide it for you. So we need the author's name or names, the article title, the journal number, the volume number, issue number, date of publication, and page range. The title of the database the journal is stored on, which may not be the one that you use to get to it. The DOI, which stands for Digital Object Identifier and is kind of like the web address, but it looks a little bit different. Or the URL, which is the web address, if a DOI isn't available. And then the date of access. So here is the article that I picked. I just chose it because it sounded nice. Perseverance is important, especially in 2021 when we're all exhausted from dealing with COVID for so long and everything is more difficult than usual. The database that I have access to is called Galileo. On Galileo, I have the option to click this little button. See, if I hover over it, it says Cite. Now I'm just going to scroll through here. Look at all these different formatting options. Remember that I mentioned that APA is used pretty often, and notice they use the same information like the article title and the author's names, but they punctuate differently and have stuff in a different order depending on the style. So here's MLA. Before I put it in my document, I want to point out a few things. First is the use of et al. This is an abbreviation for the Latin phrase et alis, which means and others. What that means is that there are more than 2 authors for this article. You already know what to do if there's one author. This article has more than 2. After we get done with this, I'll explain what to do with the source that has exactly 2 authors. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag to highlight it, then copy it, and just paste it into my document. Now when I paste, I use paste and match formatting so that it keeps the font, size, and spacing that I already have, which is convenient, mostly. Paste and match formatting is under the edit menu in Google Docs. The only catch is that I have to go back and re-italicize some stuff, which is fine because I wanted to talk about what needs to be italicized anyhow. So the title of the journal is Change, the Magazine of Higher Learning. So I'm going to click and drag to highlight that and then italicize it. That is a major work because it is a container. Just like a print magazine or a newspaper, it contains the articles, which are minor works. But we got to the journal through an online database that acts as a container for a whole bunch of journals. So the name of the database is EBSCOhost, so I'm going to click and highlight that and italicize that as well. Okay, and then I'm going to go in at the end and add the date of access, like this. It wasn't there because, like I said earlier, MLA doesn't require it. But some teachers do, so it's helpful to know how to do it. Remember, the number of the day, the abbreviated month, and the 4-digit year. So we're done with that, but I'm going to edit it so that you know what to do if you have a source with exactly 2 authors. Notice that the author's name is last name, comma, first name. You only do that with the first author. The other author's name is in normal author. This is because when we set up the Works Cited page, we're going to use alphabetical order and last names are helpful for that. So the second author's name would make the entry look like this. Foote, comma, Kathleen, and Charles Henderson, period. And then the rest of it is the same. Notice that there's no comma before the and. This is because there's only 2 authors in the list, and we don't put commas in lists until we get to 3 or more items. Guess what? You made it. Congratulations! Seriously, if you got this far, give yourself a round of applause. Yeah, I know, it's a terrible joke. I'd have made a great dad. I tell so many bad jokes. Thank you so much for your patience and your perseverance, like the article talks about. And if you can think of anything that I could do to make this lesson more interesting and or less tedious, let me know in the comments. Please. But other than that, have a fabulous rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.